Hey, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me today. My name is Terrell Baldock and I'm a pelvic health fitness coach. This means I help women from all over the world with whatever it is going on within their pelvic floor. I help them get back into the activities or the sports that they love the most, while feeling brave in their bodies and confident that what is happening within their pelvic floor stays in their pelvic floor. I got into this work, I guess around 6 years ago. I was pregnant with my daughter and I had a lot of pain in this area here known as the pubic symphysis. Now, when I'd ask my midwives why I was in this pain, because it was uncomfortable and I wanted it to go away, when I asked about it, I was told that it was normal and it was my body's way of preparing for birth. Now at 18 weeks pregnant, I'm not exactly convinced that it's my body getting ready to exit a baby, right? So I went on this little bit of a research tangent and went to every site imaginable that I can find on Google. And this was a common thing I learned that women were being told, that the pain within their pelvic floor was just normal, when in fact, there was treatment options available like pelvic floor physiotherapy. Now, people like me didn't exist at that time and pelvic floor physiotherapy was quite new. But thanks to my pelvic floor physiotherapist, she encouraged me to get into this work to help women who wanted to remain active in whatever the activity was that they love the most. So, in a way, I'm grateful for that experience because it led me here. So now you may be wondering, what is a pelvic floor? And this is a really good question. And just so you know, there are a lot of people out there who have no idea what this muscle group was. And I didn't know this either until I was pregnant the second time around. So even the first time I was pregnant, nobody brought up my pelvic floor and what changes it's about to go through. So to explain what your pelvic floor is, I've got a pelvis here. Now this is a female pelvis. A male pelvis is a bit narrower, simply because they don't have babies. So our pelvis is a bit wider because, we at one point in our lives may have a baby. So that's why our bodies are built like this. Okay, so if you look at the bottom of the pelvis, you'll see there's a vaginal opening as well as your anus, and then up here, I don't know if you can see it, that's your urethra. Now, that's your first layer. We've got our perineum here. There's another layer just beneath that, and then a third layer on the inside. I'm not sure if you can see it, but it is there. So these group of muscles connect from the front, the back, and the side to side of your pelvis. And the reason why I think that we don't really acknowledge or talk about these muscles is because we don't really see them. So it's not like the same thing as, your abs or your biceps or your legs. We know those muscles are there, but we don't really talk about the muscles within our pelvis. Now, the reason why these muscles are so important is because they help us function. So they help us do things like go pee and go poo. They help stabilize the rest of our body. They help us move. These pelvic floor muscles help us move. They also assist and help with our sexual health. Now, those are all things that I'm going to get into a little bit later and a little bit more specifically, but that's really just a quick rundown of your pelvic floor. Other thing to mention is that it's an anticipatory muscle. So when it's working well, it knows what you're going to do before you even do it. So if you raise your arm, your pelvic floor is activating a split second before your arm goes up. Okay. Yeah. So what happens with these muscles is they can become tight. They can also be not so tight. I'd hate to use the word weak, but they may not be able to contract or relax in the ways that they need. So most commonly, especially with female athletes, so this is across the board, right? It's, dancers, it's gymnasts, it's lifters, it's marathon runners. It is extremely common that these muscles, your pelvic floor muscles, are overactive or they're working a lot. They're working in overdrive. Again, simply because we're not really aware of them. It's not really anywhere within our training, right? So we're not thinking about mobilizing these muscles after they've worked so hard, right? So again, it's super common. So ideally, what we want to see happen, so if you're doing a dance performance, ideally your pelvic floor would relax and contract with your breathing and with your movement. So we need some coordination there. This is known as the ABCs, so alignment, breathing, and coordination, okay? What we need to think about and be aware of is really how we stand day to day. So first, we're going to talk about your alignment. Now, this is different. So growing up, I remember my mom grabbing my shoulders and going, get those shoulders back, right? This is a little different than that, okay? Because really, our bodies are meant to move in various ways. And I've moved away from talking about like perfect posture and more of what alignment means for you, because alignment or neutral alignment is relative based on your body. But ideally, what we want to think about is our ribs stacked directly over our hips. What I see a lot of with people of all ages and stages is first, and this is the most common thing I see just based on our lives sitting at desks, or, hanging out at home or whatever it is, I see a lot of this. So the shoulders rolling forward and the pelvis, not sure if you can see me there, kind of tucked under, right? So this is going to put some pressure on your lower back, but what this is also doing is taking your diaphragm and putting it a little bit behind on your pelvic floor, or behind your pelvic floor, sorry. So when we stack our ribs up over our hips, our diaphragm is here. Our pelvic floor is down here. We want your diaphragm and your pelvic floor directly over top of each other, okay? Because when they're in alignment and when you're standing in neutral in what it means for you in your body, your diaphragm and your pelvic floor move together with your breath, right? So when you inhale, your pelvic floor comes down, right? Your rib cage should expand. Again, another tight area for a lot of people. But when you take that big deep breath in, we should get lots of movement within a rib cage, okay? And I'm talking about breathing into your belly, your chest, your armpits, your back. So a complete inhale and then exhaling through your mouth like you're blowing through a straw. So this gets your diaphragm moving in unison with your pelvic floor. So you inhale, your diaphragm and your pelvic floor come down. On the exhale, your pelvic floor and your diaphragm move up and in. Okay, so I'm gonna have you do that. You can do this laying on the floor, standing up, or seated. Put one hand on just below your breast, the other on your belly, because really what we want to feel is both moving and expanding on the inhale and then coming back in on the exhale. So inhale, right? You should feel that rib cage coming out and up, and then your rib cage kind of comes back in, right? So, all right, good job. So again, we want to be feeling movement. So if this was my rib cage on the inhale, your rib cage is filling up like, I lost my wording there. So it's opening up like an umbrella and then coming back in on the exhale. So when this is all moving well together, your pelvic floor is moving well. Now, some things that get in the way of this process is a lot of muscle tension. So we tend to carry a lot of tension just as humans in general, right? But sometimes we carry a lot of tension based on the nature of what we do with our bodies on a day-to-day basis, or based on the activities that we're doing. It is really common that we hold in our belly. So I don't know about you, but I remember, growing up, always hearing suck in your gut. All right, that'll make you look thinner, suck in your gut. So what's happening is the muscles in your abdomen. So we've got our left and right rectus muscles. These are our six-pack abs. We have our obliques, so there's the internal and external obliques, and then our TVA, which is, right within our pelvis. You'll see the connection in just a sec. But when all of these muscles are contracted, and I want you to try this. Contract, or and suck in your gut, and try to breathe again in the way that I just showed you, okay? So again, clenching everything nice and tight, inhale in and exhale out, okay? Give that a couple of tries and I promise you, you will feel the difference, simply because there isn't enough room or enough space for your diaphragm and your pelvic floor to move. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to try both breathing strategies. So if it's easier for you just to relax on the floor, remember to keep your ribs in line with your hips. If you need, put one hand on your rib, the other on your belly, and feel the movement, okay? So first, nice and relaxed, big deep breath in, exhale through your mouth. Okay, do that for 5 or 6 breaths, and then suck in your gut, or imagine that somebody is about to punch you in the belly, and try breathing that way. You will notice a huge difference. So hit pause, give this a try, and really allow yourself to feel what's happening when you breathe. So what I'm really trying to say here is, there could be pain or discomfort, okay, with whether it's intercourse, penetration, or even with your orgasm. There is a lot of shame when it comes to these things, and it's something that, we just don't talk about because it's so uncomfortable. But it is an important conversation to have. So, whether you're a a woman who has had babies, or you're a young adult getting into the world and doing all of these things, or if you're 80 years old, wherever you are in your life, knowing that painful intercourse is common. So you're not alone, but it is treatable. And like I said, it is one indication that those pelvic floor muscles are working really hard and need some relaxation. So next up, I'm going to show you a few exercises that you can do. So I want you to get ready. You're doing these with me. You're not getting out of it. So I'm going to show you some exercises, some pelvic floor relaxation exercises, which are really not exercises at all, to help you ease your pelvic floor tension. All right, so this first exercise I'm going to demonstrate is a modified happy baby. So if you're in yoga, you're probably familiar with this position. Now you can do this laying on the floor, resting your legs on the couch. You can do this with your legs straight against the wall. So you want your bum right close to the wall. Or you can just use a stability ball or a Swiss ball or a chair, whichever works best for you. So basically, all you're gonna do is just rest your legs and open them. We want them open, okay? Make sure that there's a little bit of a space between your lower back and the floor, because we want to maintain that neutral position. So I'm going to have you inhale through your nose, and I really want you to pay attention to what your pelvic floor is doing here, okay? So I'm going to have you inhale in, feel those ribs expand. On the exhale, what I want you to think about is opening your vagina opening, or your vaginal opening. Okay, so with every exhale, it's going to open a bit more and a bit more. So inhale, exhale, and open. So we're not adding a muscle contraction here. Again, open. So I really want you to visualize your vagina opening with every exhale. So if you need to close your eyes and really picture that, please feel free to do so. Okay, so when your legs are elevated, so whether they're up against the wall completely or they're resting on a piece of furniture, what that is doing, it's opening your pelvic floor muscles that much more. Okay, so this is allowing you to continue to relax your pelvic floor. So again, if you need to, if you're not sure what your pelvic floor is doing, again, put 2 fingers on your perineum and just feel what that muscle is doing. So just a refresher, your perineum is the muscle between your vaginal opening and your anus. Right? So when you inhale, you should feel that, it should feel like it's moving down. When you exhale, you should feel it kind of moving up a little bit. Okay? Practice this every day if you need to, but give this a couple minutes and really get an idea of how your pelvic floor works. All right, another exercise, I guess it's not really an exercise, I guess it's just more of a breathing position, this is the laying frog. Now you'll have to forgive me, I don't know all of the names for them, I'm just a very literal person and I call it what it is. But basically, this is where you're opening your knees, so your feet are together. And then you're just gonna lay on the floor. So again, what I want you to do is that breathing, really focus in on your breathing here and imagining that your vaginal opening or those muscles are relaxing. So with every exhale again, I'm going to have you relax a little bit more. Now, I like this exercise because you can do it in bed. It's pretty easy, right? So before you go to sleep, before you get out of bed in the morning, you can really just lay in bed in a relaxed place and do this. Again, it's really allowing for even some hip mobility in here, but it is, again, opening up those pelvic floor muscles. All right, so another exercise that you can do to help open up your pelvic floor is a child's pose. Now, if your latent pregnancy and coming down onto the floor is hard for you, you can do a modified child's pose. So if you have a stability ball or even just like your kitchen chair, just push it up against the wall. And instead of doing this on the floor, you can do this completely upright on the wall or against the wall. So for our child's pose, we want our knees open. Get into your child's pose position. So really allowing yourself to sink in and down, okay? So again, inhaling through your nose, exhaling through your mouth, and envisioning everything in your pelvic floor, so your vagina and your anus, they're opening with every exhale. Now, what I like about this, and I'm going to show you here. So you hang out here for a few minutes. Then if you walk your hands out to the side, you're going to get an oblique stretch in here, which are also muscles that are known to work with the pelvic floor as well. And when these muscles get tight, it's common for your pelvic floor to be tight too. So we can get an oblique stretch in here as well. And then come to the center and to the opposite side. So again, really thinking about that deep breath in through your nose, exhaling through your mouth, and everything just relaxing with every exhale. Now this really feels good on the hips, the lower back, everything. So this is the deep squat, so I'm sure you're familiar with this one. So really you can do this in a doorway or against like a really solid piece of furniture. Or you can even maybe do it up against the wall. But what we want to do is come down as far as possible and hang out here. So we want to keep our chest tall. So if you grip low onto whatever it is that you're using for support, and you're just going to hang out here. Now, another thing that I like to do is just kind of hang out and rock. Again, really good for opening up the pelvis. This is perfect for women who are in pregnancy to help open up those muscles as well to prepare for birth. Now this one you're going to need to get your arms out of the way, but you can also add in some hip internal rotations. Again, but really just hanging out, keeping that chest tall, and envisioning everything just kind of relaxing with every exhale. So also what's really important to talk about, so we've talked about the pelvic floor muscle tightness. Now we're going to talk about the pelvic floor muscle, well, it's called weakness, but I really hate saying that. But this just means that it's not able to rather contract, so it's always relaxed, or it's not able to maintain a contraction. So basically your pelvic floor is always open, or maybe it lightly closes, but it's not able to completely engage or contract. Okay, so this isn't as common in women who, are active in dance or any other artist athleticism. It's also common in women, or it's not so common in women who are, distance athletes or lifters, right? But it does happen, and it is important to know if this is what you're experiencing as well. So this is why an internal assessment is really important in understanding how you should continue on with the work that you're doing with your pelvic floor, right? So you may experience things like lower back and hip discomfort, again, because the pelvic floor muscles aren't able to provide support to the rest of your body, right? So your lower back is taking that on. It could also very well be that your core, or the core in general, not your core specifically, but it could also be that there's some core weakness there. So we may need to introduce some type of core training. Again, making the pelvic floor working well with the rest of the system that we talked about earlier. So it's important to know whether or not your pelvic floor is working really hard, or working not at all. I tried to kind of jumble that up into one sentence and it didn't work out for me. Because there are different treatment factors. So if this is you and your pelvic floor is always open, this is where Kegels are generally recommended for you, or to you, in order to build strength and coordination with those muscles. So if you have a overactive or pelvic floor that's working all the time, we want to work on relaxing the pelvic floor so that it can relax and contract. And with a pelvic floor that doesn't work as hard or as efficiently, we need to build strength so it can contract and maintain a contraction if needed, which again, when they both relax, or when your pelvic floor muscles relax and contract, the whole system works so much better together, as well as you'll notice an improvement in your overall performance. So some great ways to think of pelvic health, or even just pelvic health or pelvic floor function, is to think of this system. So that's the diaphragm, the pelvic floor, the transverse abs, and the multifidus. If you think of this as a core canister, so this is how we talk about it in the realm of pelvic health. It's a canister, really. So you've got your top, your bottom, and then your sides. And how it manages the intra-abdominal pressure, or the air in your belly, is much of the same, right? So we flip the tab, or we open the can, you hear psst. That is all of that pressure now being released. So that kind of is the same idea of what we're working with within your pelvic floor. So like a canister, right? What I didn't mention is the intra-abdominal pressure. So this is the air in your belly. So what typically happens is, it's really common that women place a lot of pressure, or they push down onto these pelvic floor muscles, right? So that's where some of the leaking can happen as well. So we use our breathing, our alignment, and using the core system as a whole to coordinate with one another to manage that intra-abdominal pressure, okay? So if you want to know if you're bearing down, this is what we call it. Again, pressing down onto the pelvic floor muscles instead of pulling them up and in. Again, you could do something like a body weight squat. Put your 2 fingers on your perineum. Use that breathing strategy. So inhale on the way down. You can exhale as you come back up in your squat. So if I was doing a squat here, I would be inhaling on the way down. I would start my exhale a split second before coming back up into starting position, right? So you can place your fingers, 2 of your fingers on your perineum, and you should feel much of the same as what you did earlier. You should feel the perineum coming down, but it should be lifting back up. Now, if you're bearing down, you're really going to feel those muscles pressing downward on the inhale and exhale, right? So this is where we would add in that pelvic floor contraction if you have enough mobility in your pelvic floor. So if it's able to relax and contract the way that we talked earlier. If you've been told that your pelvic floor is just really strong and it needs to relax, then we need to omit the Kegel for now and work up to that. Okay? So there's just a quick overview of how to manage your intra-abdominal pressure and the Kegel. So pelvic health, your pelvic floor matters regardless of the age and stage you're in within your life. So whether you're, a young girl, you're in your tweens, teens, you're a young adult, or 40s, 60s, wherever you are in your life, it doesn't even matter if you have had a baby or not. Your pelvic health matters. And even if you didn't have a baby, some of these things can still happen. So it's really important to know how your pelvic floor is supposed to function and how it's supposed to work overall. So you can use it to improve overall performance. You can use it to give you a bit of guidance as far as how you can physically, trying to think of a word here. Okay, I'm gonna cut that part. Okay. So you can also use it not only with your performance, but how, it gives you a window into your reproductive health, your sexual health, even your mental and emotional health can be tied into what is happening with your pelvic floor. Know that at any point, if you're in pain, you're leaking, you feel bulging, pressure, you feel like something is falling out of you, these are all things that can be managed and treated. Okay, so first, if you have these concerns, talk to someone that you can trust. You can even reach out to me if you like. I'm happy to help. But talk to someone that you can trust and, who is well trained. So like myself or pelvic floor physiotherapist. Now, my first question will be, have you seen a pelvic floor physiotherapist? Because that'll give me a little bit more information of what advice to give you. But just know that you're not alone. So if you talked to somebody in the past who might have dismissed some of these things that you're feeling, just know you don't have to leave it there. There are people who want to help. So if you want to get in touch with me personally, please do. I'd love to hear from you. So you can email me at terrell@thebarbellbalance.com. So that is my business website. You can connect with me on Instagram at terrellbaldock or even on Facebook. So if you have any questions about this presentation, I'd love to hear from you. So please forward on any of your comments or your questions. Know that I'm here for you and I'm here to help. Take care, and thank you so much for allowing me to share this with you and taking the time today to do so. Have a great weekend. We'll talk soon. Bye.